You ever wonder what really keeps your favorite apps from just falling apart? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the 10 essential types of API testing that honestly make our digital world work. All right, let's dive in.
Oh, you know this feeling. You're about to buy something, post that perfect picture, or check the map, and boom, it freezes or just vanishes. And you know, 9 times out of 10, the culprit is this invisible breakdown in communication, a problem with its APIs.
So, what is an API anyway? The waiter analogy is probably the best way to get it. Just picture it. The API is the waiter. It takes your request from the app, runs back to the kitchen, which is the server, gets exactly what you asked for, and brings it right back to your table. Simple, right? But if that waiter messes up the order or the kitchen takes forever, your whole experience is ruined. And that's exactly why testing these digital waiters is so incredibly important.
Okay, so where do we even start with all this testing? Well, you start at the beginning, right? With the foundation. These first few tests are all about making sure our API waiter knows the absolute basics, like how to even take an order correctly.
First up, we've got smoke testing. And really, it's as simple as it sounds. It's the most basic, is this thing even on kind of check. You send a simple request just to see if you get anything back. It's like turning the key in a car just to make sure the engine turns over before you even think about going for a drive. It's that first vital check.
Okay, so once we know the lights are on, we get a little more specific, and that brings us to functional testing. Now we're looking at the menu, the list of requirements, and we're making sure the API delivers exactly what was asked for. If you order a cheeseburger, you better get a cheeseburger, not a fish sandwich. This test just makes sure the API is doing its specific job correctly.
But here's the thing. Most apps aren't just one simple waiter. They're a whole restaurant staff. You've got the kitchen, the payment system, the inventory. That's where integration testing comes into play. It makes sure all these different parts, connected by APIs, are actually working together in harmony.
And this is the key takeaway right here. Functional testing checks one API in a vacuum. Does the waiter do his job? Integration testing, on the other hand, checks the teamwork. Does the waiter communicate correctly with the kitchen? You absolutely need both.
All right, last one for this foundational set, regression testing. Software is always being updated, so when the developers add a cool new feature, let's say they upgrade the kitchen equipment, you gotta make sure they didn't accidentally break something that was already working. With apps updating constantly, this test is a total non-negotiable. Okay, so our API knows the menu, it works, but can it handle the real world? This is where we throw it into the gauntlet. This next batch of tests is basically like surprising our restaurant with the busiest weekend dinner rush imaginable. This is where load testing comes in. We're not just sending one customer anymore, we're simulating a big but expected number of users. How does the API hold up during the predictable lunch rush? We're looking at response times and stability to see if it can handle all that traffic without slowing to a crawl. And if you thought load testing was intense, get ready for stress testing. This isn't the lunch rush. This is a surprise flash mob crashing the restaurant. We are deliberately pushing the system way beyond its limits to find the exact point where it breaks. Sounds crazy, right? But you want to find that breaking point in a controlled environment, not when your real users are relying on you. You know, performance isn't just about one moment in time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's what reliability testing is all about. This is where we monitor the API's performance over a really long period. Is it still as fast and stable after 6 months as it was on day one? This is what ensures that long-term dependability. All right, our API works, it's tough, and it's reliable. Now it's time for the finishing touches, the polish. This final group of tests makes sure our API isn't just strong, but it's also secure and easy for everyone to use. Security testing. I mean, this one's a no-brainer. It is absolutely critical, especially when you're dealing with people's data. You can think of it like having a bouncer at the door. This test actively probes for any weaknesses or outside threats, checking things like authentication and data encryption to make sure no bad actors can get inside. Next up is UI testing. The user interface, that's the pretty part of the app you actually see and tap on. But it's completely useless if it's not talking to the API correctly in the background. This test just confirms that when you tap a button on the screen, the API in the background actually does what it's supposed to do. Okay, this next one is kind of fun to think about. We've tested for all the things we expect to happen, but what about the things we don't? What happens if you just start shouting nonsense at the waiter or try to order something that doesn't even exist? That's pretty much what fuzz testing is. It's this automated process of just throwing tons and tons of random, malformed, and completely unexpected data at the API. The whole point is to see if we can make it crash or act weird. It's a surprisingly effective way to find those hidden bugs and security holes that no one would ever think to look for. And there you have it. From just checking if the lights are on to surviving a full-on digital flash mob, these 10 tests make up the complete toolkit for building apps that are actually strong, reliable, and secure. So let's do a super quick recap, right? We built the foundation with smoke, functional, integration, and regression testing. Then we put it under pressure with load, stress, and reliability tests. And finally, we added that crucial polish with security, UI, and fuzz testing. Every single one has a unique and vital job to do. So that brings us to the end of our tour. It's pretty clear there's a ton of work happening behind the scenes to make our digital lives run smoothly. I'll leave you with this question to chew on. With all these different kinds of tests we just covered, which one do you think companies are most likely to skip? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.